Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another video for you guys from Swagkage. This one called What If Obito Saved Rin and Kakashi. Now, we've reacted to what ifs before on this channel, and I always look forward to reacting to more of them, so let's just go ahead and watch the video and not waste any more of your time.
How's it going, fellas? Swagkage here, and today we're going to be performing a fun thought experiment, answering what I think is a pretty interesting question. Now, the title probably already gave you a pretty clear idea of what we're going to be discussing here, but just for the sake of being thorough, I'll go ahead and explain the premise in a bit more detail. The idea here is that unlike in the main series, or the original timeline, I guess, after leaving the cave where Madara had been keeping him, Obito was able to regroup with Rin and Kakashi fast enough to save them from the Blood Mist Ninja. Now, at first glance, and I guess this may depend on how familiar you are with the series and its finer details, a lot of the effects that this is going to have probably won't be readily apparent. I know when I first started thinking about this, I recognized a lot of the cool things that this could lead to, but the domino effect ended up reaching a lot further than I expected. Despite the fact that Obito and Rin are the only characters mentioned in the premise we're using for this video, a surprisingly small amount of what happens as a result of this is directly adjacent to them. This has a lot of far-reaching consequences, but
it does affect a pretty. It does affect the story in a pretty significant way. I mean, it's surprising how many things you realize are reliant on Obito not making it there in time to save Rin. Like, for example, the attack on the Leaf Village doesn't happen the way it already happened. Kushina doesn't die. Obito doesn't use the Nine Tails to attack the Leaf Village, and they don't. The village elders don't end up being suspicious of the Uchiha clan, and which is what caused the Uchiha clan to plan a coup. And if that never happened, that means Itachi never takes part in the Uchiha clan massacre. Sasuke doesn't grow up with all this hatred, and Naruto still has his parents. It's just so many things change if Obito makes it there in time to save Rin.
before we get to them, let's start simple and focus on the direct immediate aftermath. So first of all, since we've prevented Rin's death, that also means we've eliminated the catalyst for Kakashi and Obito awakening their Mangekyo Sharingan. Obviously, they could still do it at some point in the future, but something else would have to prompt it. Something else that should be fairly obvious is that when Guru realizes that Madara's plan failed and Obito actually has no intentions of going back to the cave, he'll probably split off from the group and head back to Madara. Now at this point, there are still a lot of factors to consider, the most important one being the whole Rin Three-Tails situation.
Well, there's also something else that I think we need to take into consideration because, Obito, if I remember correctly, Obito still had half his body replaced with Zetsu DNA, which are made from using Hashirama's DNA, so he would still have that, but him being attached to him made him more readily able to use to use his new body without it breaking down. Because if you remember, at first when he tried to use it, it always kept he hasn't fully mastered the ability to use it without it being destroyed. So I feel like that might also play into Obito moving forward. Although I do feel like eventually when he does master it, he would become a pretty significant ally to the Leaf Village, because remember at the time, I think if I remember correctly, they were still, if I remember, they kind of banned experimentation on Hashirama Senju's DNA because they realized that no one could sustain that power. And I feel like if the village were to find out that Obito basically has half of his body made of Hashirama cells, and he's survived, I feel like there's a chance that might come into play, and it might. I mean, imagine how, because if he were to go back to the Uchiha clan, imagine how they would react when they find out that one of their own incorporated the DNA of one of the Senju clan, and not just any member of the Senju clan, but Hashirama Senju, who's, you could say, the strongest member of the Senju clan, incorporated his DNA into his, and he didn't die. I feel like, again, that would have some pretty significant ramification. I feel like the Uchiha clan would try to find a way to say, okay, how did he survive, and let's see if there's a way we can replicate it. I feel like if they were to do that, there's a chance the Uchiha clan might grow to be a hell of a lot stronger than they already were. I mean, yeah. Granted, you could say that the Uchiha clan is kind of prideful, and there's a chance they might not do that, but I feel like there's a chance some of them might put their pride to the side if it means that they could gain more power by incorporating Hashirama's DNA into their body, even if it's just a little bit. These, like we've talked about before, the benefits just far I feel like are worth it. Like they're worth putting your pride aside in order for that to happen. Just wanted to talk about that.
Intentions of going back to the cave, he'll probably split off from the group and head back to Madara. Now at this point, there are still a lot of factors to consider, the most important one being the whole Rin Three Tails situation. So based on the way I interpreted it, I don't think Rin was supposed to find out that she was Isobu's Jinchuriki. Granted, this very well might not be the case. It really depends on how the mist sealed the Three Tails inside of her, but I've always assumed that
I know you guys are, so you know what, let me just lower the volume on the mic, because yeah, wait, no, actually I think it's the other way. Okay, there we go. So yeah, I just have to be careful with the volume, because you guys know how YouTube is with copyright.
she was knocked unconscious or put into a trance with
We'll
genjutsu or something like that that would have kept her from observing the sealing process. Since the success of the plan hinges on Rin willingly returning to Konoha, it just makes no sense to clue her in on any of the details. Even if Rin wasn't told why she was made into a Jinchuriki, figuring it out wouldn't be too hard. The Biju are extremely valuable resources, so for the Mist to seal one inside of an enemy ninja, they'd probably have to have something like this very exact same plan in mind. Now, the reason this is all important is because I think that as long as Rin stays out of Konoha, saving her is very doable. The seal just needs to hold out for long enough for Minato to be able to rendezvous with his team, and Rin should be good to go from there. For those of you who may have forgotten, Minato is one of the best users of Fuin Jutsu in the entire ninja world, and one of the things he's explicitly shown doing is reinforcing the seal used to contain the Nine Tails within Naruto. I should also add that Minato pulled this off from beyond the grave by sealing a portion of his own chakra inside of Naruto. It was this manifestation of his chakra that reinforced the seal, and this was when the Nine Tails was well on its way to completely breaking free. So strengthening Rin's seal to keep the Three Tails contained should be light work for him. Of course, there is a chance that Minato wouldn't be able to show up in time, but even if the Three Tails did manage to break free, he should be more than capable of containing it single-handedly. The issue with this is that a Three Tails rampage would probably lead to Rin's death, which itself would lead to Obito awakening his Mangekyo Sharingan, and also probably to him returning to Madara's cave, though there is a chance that Minato and Kakashi would at least be able to talk him out of it. It's definitely up in the air though, so we'll just have to hope that Minato shows up in time to get the Three Tails under control. Otherwise, there's a very real chance that effectively nothing changes and the series just proceeds as it originally did. Now, assuming Minato does show up to save the day, which is very plausible considering he gave Kakashi one of his kunai, this is where things start to get really, really different. It's hard to say for sure, of course, but I feel like this would completely transform the final stages of the war, not because Obito or Rin would be able to like help the Leaf beat everyone up or whatever, but because I think that once everyone realizes that the Leaf has an extra Biju at its disposal, the politics surrounding the war will begin to change. I think it's very likely that the Mist will demand that the Three Tails be returned to them as part of their terms for negotiating peace, but whether or not the Leaf would like agree to do it is pretty ambiguous. I don't even think the Leaf would necessarily have a problem with returning the Three Tails if Rin didn't have to die in the process. And granted, if Rin was just a no-name ninja with like no connections, this may not even be a factor and the Leaf would probably just decide to do it anyway. But when considering the fact that Minato was arguably the Leaf's most important asset in the whole war, and she's one of his students, they would probably never follow through with a deal like this. It also wouldn't be hard at all to make an argument in favor of keeping the Three Tails. Like, under these circumstances, the Mist would have plain and simple fumbled the bag, and it would have been entirely their fault. Not to mention, the whole reason they lost it is because they were trying to do something pretty heinous and awful by just about any reasonable moral standard.
Dude, there's no way they would tell them, oh yeah, sure, here you go, here's your bomb, here's your nuke back that you put in our village to try to destroy it, and now you're asking us, hey, if you want peace, you better give us back the weapon that we wanted to use to destroy you. It's like, no, dude, fuck you. The only reason you lost it is because you tried to take us out, and now you're telling us that we need to give it back? Hey, you know what? How about if you do not agree to this peace negotiation, we will use 2 of our tailed beasts to destroy you. How about that, huh? Is that good enough for you?
Plan could be safely considered not nice, at the very least. Now, since this is a world war, peace negotiations could work all sorts of different ways. It could be on a village-to-village basis, there could be a summit like the one Hashirama called around the time of the First Great Ninja War. It's really up in the air. But whatever the circumstances are, they're definitely going to have an effect on the whole Three-Tails situation. If the peace negotiations happen at, like, a summit, for example, and it's either we all agree on everything or we don't agree on anything, type of situation, then the other villages may pressure the Leaf into giving Isobu back to the Mist so that everybody can go home and nobody else has to die. It depends on how badly and how quickly each of the 5 great nations wants to end the war, or at the very least pull out of the war themselves, and also on how uncomfortable they are with the idea of Konoha having an extra Biju. But it's also very possible that at least 1 or 2 of the other villages will want to avoid getting on the Leaf's bad side because of how dominant they were throughout the Third War. Based on what we know, especially if we take filler into consideration, the Stone specifically had a really hard time fighting against Konoha, and both the Sand and Cloud villages had recently lost their Kazekage and Raikage respectively, so I think it's a lot more likely that all 3 of them will probably want to pull out of the war on an individual basis, and may even agree to an alliance with Konoha if that's what it takes to get a peace treaty signed. If that's what ends up happening, then the Mist Village will eventually have to back down and accept whatever terms are laid out by the Leaf in order to avoid being annihilated by a 2, 3, or maybe even 4-nation alliance. Speaking of the Mist Village, by the time we reach a point in this timeline where the original series would have began, their history should look noticeably different. Primarily because A, since Yagura would no longer be the Three-Tails Jinchuriki, it's very possible that he wouldn't become Mizukage in the first place, and B, because Obito wouldn't be there controlling whoever the new Mizukage is from the shadows, since he'd be back home in Konoha. Now, it's unclear exactly how responsible the Obito-controlled Yagura was for all the Blood Mist stuff, since they were being referred to as the Blood Mist before he should have been able to take power. So I guess it depends on who ends up taking over after the 3rd Mizukage, but in this timeline, the Mist could end up reforming a lot sooner than they did in the original series. This could lead to all sorts of differences from the original timeline, like for example, Kisame may never end up defecting from the Mist Village if it gets its act together, and he certainly wouldn't join the Akatsuki because he'd never end up meeting Obito. Speaking of the Akatsuki, it's also possible, though not particularly likely, that Danzo will end up losing interest in the Hidden Rain Village once he learns that the Leaf is now in possession of the Three-Tails. News like this may be major enough to cause him to leave the Rain Village entirely so he can go back to the Land of Fire and keep an eye on Rin. Without Danzo in the Rain Village for an extended period of time, Hanzo may never end up being convinced that he should be afraid of the Akatsuki. Thus, Yahiko may never end up dying, Nagato may never end up crippled, and the Akatsuki may even end up establishing an alliance with Hanzo like the group originally intended. There are a lot of maybes there though, so it is still totally possible that Hanzo ends up killing Yahiko and nothing really changes for Nagato and Konan. Regardless, the Akatsuki is gonna look a lot different one way or another because Obito won't be there to mess with it, Itachi will probably never become a member because, well, in order to explain that, let's talk about how this affects Konoha. So I already talked about a lot of this in my What If Minato Never Died video, but as long as the Leaf doesn't assume that the Uchiha clan was behind the Nine-Tails attack, they probably don't have to worry about being completely exterminated. And since in this timeline there won't be a Nine-Tails attack, since Obito won't be carrying out the Eye of the Moon plan, unless something else happens that's like really big and really incriminates the clan, they probably won't have anything to worry about. Now this may go without saying, but in this timeline the Leaf Village would be pretty stacked. They'd have Minato, Hiruzen, the Uchiha clan, 2 Biju, and included in the Uchiha clan, by the way, would be Obito with the enhancements he received from Madara. So I think it's safe to say that they'd be pretty safe. I can't imagine any of the 5 great nations would want to declare war on them. The only group they'd really have to worry about is the Rain Village, but with Minato as the Hokage, and by the way, this is Minato with like 12 to 16 extra years worth of training by the time we reach Shippuden, they should be able to handle anything that's thrown at them. It's hard to speculate about anything else, including what the Leaf would do with the information that Madara was still alive, without venturing into complete fanfic territory, so I think this is a good place to end the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, thanks for watching. Take care.
Okay, so that's it. That is the video. So now, you know, like he said, he pretty much went through all of it. Now, the one thing that I do kind of want to talk about is he brought it up near the end, which is what exactly is Madara going to do? Now, for me personally, the only thing that, one second. Sorry about that. Just something to take care of. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. When it comes to Madara, so like I said, the only thing that I can realistically think of when it comes to how Madara would be handled in this situation is, I feel like somehow, some way, Madara would find a way to get to Sasuke. And the reason why I say that is because Madara, if you remember, there was a moment in the war, well, two moments if you think about it. Two moments in the war that made Madara kind of interested in Sasuke. One was right after Madara was reincarnated and, brought back using the linear rebirth technique. He looked at Sasuke when Sasuke tried to kill him and realized that he had the basically the same pattern of Sharingan that he did, which I guess kind of makes sense since they're both, I guess you could say, reincarnations of Indra, but that's neither here nor there. And he basically asked him like, hey, maybe you should join sides. And then later on, after Naruto and Sasuke got their power ups from the Sage of Six Paths, he looked at Sasuke and talked about how his insane, his calm demeanor during battle and his insane analytical ability, and the fact that he has the same pattern of the Mangekyo as he did. He said that if this guy was born before Obito, like, man, he would have easily helped me accomplish my plans. So I feel like if Obito, it does become out of the question, I feel like somehow, some way, Madara would find out about Sasuke. Although the one thing that does kind of hinder that is, the Sasuke kind of, whether we like it or not, kind of depends on being the reincarnate of Indra, because I feel like that's partly why. Well, maybe not necessarily. You know what? Let's take that out of the equation. I feel like Sasuke was talked about how he was a generational genius, like a type of genius that doesn't just show up that only shows up once every few generations. And I feel like Madara would look at that and say, you know what, I want this kid on my side. So I don't know. I feel like there might be some way that he'll try to get him on his side. I don't know how he's gonna do it, because Itachi would still be alive, the Uchiha clan would still be alive. There wouldn't be that hatred within Sasuke from that stemmed from his clan being murdered and then finding out that his brother was being manipulated by the village to do all of that because he wasn't really given a choice. I feel like without that it would be kind of difficult, but I feel like if there's anyone who could find a way to do it, I feel like Madara would find a way to try to manipulate Sasuke into basically embracing that darkness inside him and joining him in some way, shape, or form. Anyway, that's all I have for today, guys. I'm going to end this video right here. Sorry about that little pause towards the end. It's just I had something to take care of. Anyway, with that being said, thank you so much for watching and or listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, not just for me, but also to Swagkage. Go show him some support on his channel by subscribing. And also remember to hit the bell to know whenever a new reaction comes out and whenever I go live. I hope you enjoyed the vid. Remember to stay safe, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.